Welcome to the Christ Central morning devotional on Monday the 14th of December 2020. And today we're carrying on with our little pre-Christmas, not quite Advent series of readings. So I'm going to start today by reading the first 10 verses of Isaiah chapter 11. A shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. From his roots a branch will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and power, the Spirit of knowledge and fear of the Lord. And he will delight in the fear of the Lord. He will not judge by what he sees with his eyes, or decide by what he hears with his ears, but with righteousness he will judge the needy. With justice he will give decisions for the poor of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. With the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. Righteousness will be his belt, and faithfulness the sash around his waist. The wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, the calf and the lion and the yearling together, and the little child will lead them. The cow will feed with the bear, the young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like the ox. The infant will play near the hole of the cobra, and the young child has put his hand into the viper's nest. They will neither harm nor destroy on my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. And in that day the rod of Jesse will stand as a banner for all peoples. The nations will rally to him, and his place of rest will be glorious. So, what I was wondering about was what was going on as this reading was happening, or as this bit was read. So I had a little bit of a poke around to see if I could find out a bit more about Isaiah, because I thought that might be helpful in understanding what's going on here. So at this time in history, we've got the two kingdoms of Israel. We've got Israel in the north and Judah in the south. And Isaiah is a prophet working in the southern kingdom of Judah. Amos is the prophet in Israel. And at this time as well, the kingdoms have become rather wealthy. And that has led to idolatry and irreverence towards God and disregard for some of the poorer and I was going to say less significant people, but that's clearly showing a bias. People who could be ignored were ignored. And I also was told that Isaiah was the cousin of King Uzziah. So that means that he had access to the royal court and a certain amount of privilege and possibly the right connections. So thinking about what Mike said on Friday, when God took Uzziah to his court, when he had the vision when King Uzziah died in chapter 6, and he was commissioned, when he saw how God was holy and how holy God was, he was overcome by how unclean he was. He says, I am a man of unclean lips. And God commissioned him and purified him, and then sent him into the country which was entirely disregarding what God was saying, to tell them about judgment and about hope. So the first part was the judgment bit. So essentially it was rebellion against God's will be punished. And the people need to repent of their idolatry and their oppression of the poor. And that's what we see in the few verses before this today. And God says how he's going to use, first of all, the Assyrians, and then later Babylonians to punish Israel. And then halfway through Isaiah, we get to the exile where they're carried off to Babylon. But back to today. So we've got the Assyrians, and it talks about the Israel being cut down like trees. And then later on, we have the hope bit. And that's kind of where we come in. So at the end of chapter 10, we've got the Israeli country, the country of Israel being cut down. And it's like a forest being cut down. And then we have this wonderful little message of hope starting off. So there is going to be a shoot come up from the line of Jesse. That's like new growth, something new. And Jesse associated with King David's line, the messianic line. This is going to be something big and important. And a new shoot is new growth, and it's new life, and it's hopefully going to be something fantastic coming forwards. So there we have new growth from the Messianic line. And then we read in here about the Spirit of the Lord will rest on him. And we're told a spirit of wisdom and understanding. And by that we could infer there's going to be leadership. He's going to be wise, and he's going to have understanding of how to solve problems. He's going to have counsel and might. And that's going to imply that he's going to carry out his plans, that nothing will stand in his way. So his will be carried out. And knowledge and the fear of the Lord. And it's this last bit, the fear of the Lord, the holiness, is going to rest on him. And this is drawn as an in contrast to what's going on in Israel and Judah at the time of the rebellion against God's will. So we're then told that although human leaders are deceived by sly words and what they see in front of them, this new growth from the stump, this new Messiah, he's going to trust in the Lord, and he's going to see with God's eyes, and he's not going to be deceived in this way. And he will look after the poor, and not just for his own ends, but he will use the rod of his mouth, that is the truth, as we see illustrated in Revelation, to actually rule righteously. There we go. And we have a little illustration here as well. It almost slips in about the armor of God, which is what Paul uses maybe later on in the New Testament. And then we have this wonderful passage about there being peace and the animals lying down together. And that might be a future glory where all of these animals lie down together, or it might be that at that time that the prowling lions like Assyria and Babylon and Egypt will no longer be destroying the small countries and taking them over and taking all the people back to slavery. But in actual fact, it's almost irrelevant which it is, because it's a time of great peace that we can see. It's something to look forward to. It's going to be a time of safety for all peoples, and it's going to be a time where they can live together peacefully in God's harmony. And then we have this wonderful verse in verse 10, where it says, "In that day the rod of Jesse will stand as a banner for all peoples, the nations will rally to him." So we have this vision of all people coming to know God. And so if all people are coming to know God, then God's going to need to be able to draw people to him. So we have at this time preparing for the birth of the Messiah, but at the same time we can be thinking about how can we be drawing people to God and pointing people to God in these dark times. And that's our challenge for today. Thank you.